It swelled with migrant workers and their families during harvest time, corn and wheat and tomatoes and sugar beets, and shrank again when the workers moved on. Others moved into the area for the jobs created by the factories that sprang up around Hancock County. Immigrants from Italy, Austria, Hungary, Poland, Russia, and many other countries were processed through Ellis Island and absorbed by the cities and towns of the East, though some went west, and some of those stopped and settled down in Bonomie, which seemed as good a place as any. Over time, the original grid became known as downtown, and what wasn't downtown became known as neighborhoods. Not sections, which would have suggested clear dividing lines and the need for those lines, but general neighborhoods that took shape as people found their people. There were well-to-do neighborhoods and poor neighborhoods, and there were all the neighborhoods in between. There was a neighborhood called Tiller's Flat, where several Mexican families and nearly all the black families in town, less than a dozen, lived, many of whom had moved from the South for the industry jobs, and to get away from the South. There was a neighborhood of apartment buildings and bungalows called Chesterton that was made up mostly of migrant families from out west, and a neighborhood situated between the two synagogues that was thought of as mostly Jewish. When people wanted an Irish neighborhood to point to, they could always refer to the block with St. Catherine's and Good Shepherd School as Vatican City. And scattered throughout these neighborhoods were all the people who didn't think they belonged to any group, most of them Protestant. By the time the U.S. got into the Second World War, the population of Bonomie had topped 6,000. The town had its own police force, fire department, and vocational college. It had 24 restaurants, if you counted coffee shops and soda fountains, 5 banks, 4 dry cleaners, 2 record stores, and a movie house. Industry thrived in and around town, such as J&J Concrete, Tuck & Sons Aluminum, and the Mid-American Canning Company. And industry died, such as Ingleton's Fizzy Pops, Dilco's Feed and Supplements, and the Hancock Bell and Skillet Company. There was a horseshoe-shaped lake with a fetch of a quarter-mile just south of town off Route 18. To the north, where the exit ramp off Cooper Road fed onto Highway 23, the neon Tuck & Sons Tulip, 20 feet in diameter, pink and flat as a stencil, stood atop a 100-foot pole, visible for miles. A rusted grain elevator still bearing the checkered Purina logo loomed like a monolith at the east end of Main Street. Passenger and cargo trains came through town day and night, and some of them stopped to deposit or collect people and mail and goods, but most of them bypassed the rail yard and the station, and town altogether. Bonomie wasn't nearly so small that everyone knew everyone else, but it was small enough that, sooner or later, most everyone felt as if they'd laid eyes on most everyone else. Since the start of the war, fewer and fewer young men were seen on Main Street. Meanwhile, there was no shortage of old-timers, 50 and up, who'd fought in the last big war. One who'd lost an arm and wore his sleeve pinned, another who got around on wooden crutches because one of his legs had been blown off just below the knee. Cal's own father had been awarded a Purple Heart for taking a bullet through his shoulder while pulling a wounded officer into a foxhole in the Meuse Argonne, though the medal was not to be seen in his increasingly cluttered house, and he didn't want to talk about his war days. Cal was astounded by the impact 2 inches of leg could have on a person. Being deprived of those inches, he'd gained what seemed to be a full and healthy life. But feeling happy about it didn't seem right. Not when 1 million young men were inducted during the first year America got into World War II, and 10 million by early May of 1945. That Tuesday morning, Cal had just opened Hanover Hardware on Sutton Street and was sitting on a stool behind the counter, sorting a box of washers, when a woman walked in and asked if he had a radio. Her forehead was high, and her red hair was done up in victory rolls. Her mint-green dress and matching pillbox hat, her white gloves, and her coral lipstick suggested money to Cal. Her eyes latched onto his as she crossed the linoleum floor. He told her, yes, the store had a Zenith, but it wasn't for sale, it was in the office. She asked where the office was. Basement, Cal said, nodding toward the stairs just past the end of the counter, and without another word she walked past him, right past the handwritten sign that read Employees Only, and started down the stairs. Ma'am? Cal said. He dropped the washers into the box and followed her.
To keep listening to this audiobook for free, click the link in the description. It will take you to a free Audible trial where you can listen to this and many other books for free for 30 days.